The last cold winds blew through the broken streets of the alien refugee colony. Metal roofs rattled, lights flickered. No one smiled in this place. Hunger and sadness lived in every corner. Derek pulled his coat tighter. He was a human, far from Earth, working in one of the outer colonies as a machine repairman. The work was hard, the pay was small, but it kept him alive. He reached into his pocket. Only 1 credit left. Not enough for a proper meal. Just enough for a small hot drink, or a crust of bread. He sighed and looked around. That's when he saw her. In the shadows between 2 metal walls, a figure sat. At first he thought it was a statue. Then he noticed it shivered. She was an alien woman. Her skin was pale blue, her face thin and tired. Her arms were wrapped tightly around 2 small children. They had no jackets, just old torn cloth wrapped around their bodies. Their feet were bare, pressed against the freezing ground. The children didn't cry, but their eyes were full of fear. Derek froze. Something about the scene hit him hard. She looked up. Their eyes met. She didn't beg. She didn't speak. But in her glowing yellow eyes, Derek saw something worse than hunger, hopelessness. He looked down at the coin in his hand. His stomach growled. He was tired, cold, alone. But something inside him whispered, "They're colder than you." Without a word, Derek turned and walked into a nearby trader's tent. The seller was a greedy-looking alien with 3 eyes. "What do you want, human?" "Something warm," Derek said. "Not for me. For them." He pointed toward the woman and her children. The trader rolled his eyes. "They're trash. Half-bloods. Useless." Derek didn't argue. He placed the coin on the counter. "Give me the warmest blanket this can buy." The trader grunted and threw down a second-hand thermal blanket. It wasn't new, but it worked. Derek took it and walked back toward the alley. The alien mother was still there, holding her children tight. She looked up again as Derek kneeled beside her. Gently, he unfolded the blanket and placed it around the kids first. Then around her back and shoulders. She flinched at first, then froze. Her eyes filled with tears. Still, no words. He nodded once, stood up, and began to walk away. "Wait," a soft voice whispered. He turned. She was holding out a small, broken badge. Maybe it once meant something to her. He shook his head. "No, it's a gift. Keep it." She lowered her head. The children were already asleep under the blanket, warm for the first time in days. Derek walked back into the cold night, hands in his pockets, belly still empty. But somehow, his heart felt full, back in his small metal hut. Derek lit a weak fire and sat alone. Why had he done that? He didn't know her name, didn't know her story. But her eyes, they had screamed louder than any voice. The next morning, he returned to the same alley before work. She was still there, still wrapped in the blanket. The children were awake now, smiling weakly. One waved at him, the smallest one. The mother stood up as he approached. She bowed her head, deep, respectful. In her world, it meant life debt. Derek looked away, awkward. "You don't owe me anything." She stepped closer, slowly. Her fingers touched his sleeve, very light, very careful. Then she stepped back. No words. Just a look. A promise. Derek nodded once more, turned and left. But in his heart, something had already changed. Derek didn't plan to go back. He had given the blanket. That was it. A one-time kindness. Nothing more. But all day at work, he kept thinking about her, the alien woman, her tired eyes, the way her thin arms wrapped around her children, the way she had gently touched his sleeve, like she hadn't touched kindness in years. He fixed machines with his hands, but her silent touch had fixed something in him. That evening, he packed a small container of leftover soup. It wasn't much, just reheated broth with a few old vegetables. But it was warm. He didn't know why he packed it. His own stomach had growled all day. He needed it. But as the sun began to set, his legs walked on their own, back to the alley. She was still there, wrapped in the blanket, her children asleep. Again, cuddled beside her. When she saw him, she stood slowly. Her eyes widened as if in disbelief. She didn't expect him to return. Derek knelt down and placed the small container in front of her. "It's warm," he said. The woman stared. Then, carefully, she took the soup and opened it. Steam rose into the cold night air. Her hands shook. She didn't eat first? She woke her oldest child and let him take the first sip. Then the younger one. Only when both had eaten did she taste the soup herself. She didn't cry this time. She smiled. It was small, soft, but real. Then, she did something that shocked Derek. She reached under the blanket and pulled out a small metallic object. Translator ring, old, cracked, but still usable. She placed it on her finger and spoke for the first time. Her voice was low, strange, with a slight hum. But the ring made it clear. Why? Derek blinked. Why what? Why help? She asked. You are human, I am not. Derek looked down. Because I've been cold. I've been hungry. I know that pain. The woman stared. Then she whispered, Many saw us. Only you stopped. He didn't know what to say. I am Sarah, she said slowly. My children, Rhea and Kal. Derek nodded. Derek, Sarah, touched her chest. We live, because you gave warmth. He shook his head. You were already alive. I just gave a blanket. Sarah's gaze didn't move. Not just blanket. You gave hope. The wind howled through the metal streets again. Derek looked around. You shouldn't sleep out here. It's going to snow. Sarah lowered her head. We have nowhere. He stood quietly, then said, Follow me. She looked unsure. I have a small hut. It's not much, Derek said. But it's dry. She hesitated, then looked at her sleeping children. Finally, she nodded. The walk was slow. Sarah moved carefully, holding her little ones. Derek offered to help, but she shook her head. She would carry them herself. When they reached Derek's hut, he opened the metal door. It was dark, cramped, and smelled like engine oil. A broken heater buzzed in the corner, but it was better than the open street. Sarah stepped in, looked around, and gently placed her children on the floor. She wrapped them in the blanket again and sat beside them. Derek handed her a cup of water. It's not clean, but it's boiled. Sarah took it and nodded. Thank you. Then she curled beside her children. Quiet, watching him. He sat on the other side of the room. He didn't speak. He didn't stare. Just watched the small heater and listened to the wind outside. Minutes passed. Then, a whisper. Derek? He looked up. Sarah's voice was low. We will not be trouble. We just need a few days. Until I find food work. Derek shook his head. Stay as long as you need. Her eyes softened again. Why are you alone? She asked. Derek stared into the small flame. Because I gave up on people a long time ago, he said. But tonight I met someone who didn't feel like just a stranger. She said nothing. But that night, inside a broken metal hut on a cold planet, two souls, one human, one alien, shared warmth not just from a heater, but from something far rarer. Understanding. The next morning, the first light of dawn broke through the cracks in the hut's rusted walls. A soft glow touched the faces of the sleeping children. Sarah opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she didn't move. She listened. No screaming, no fighting, no hunger cries, just silence and warmth. Rhea and Kal were still asleep, wrapped safely in the blanket Derek had once bought with his last coin. She looked toward the other side of the hut. Derek was already up, sitting cross-legged on the floor. He was quietly repairing a broken food warmer. His fingers were rough, stained with old grease, but they moved with care. Sarah sat up slowly, not wanting to wake her children. "You fix things?" she asked softly. Derek didn't look up. "Machines. Mostly." She watched him for a few seconds. "You fixed more than that," she whispered. He looked up now, puzzled. "You fixed?" "Something inside me," Sarah said. "I thought no one would ever see me again, not as a person, just as trash, a broken alien mother." Derek's hands paused. "You're not broken." She looked down, silent. "I don't know your story," Derek said. "But if you're still breathing after all, that means you're strong," Sarah smiled faintly. She touched the translator ring on her finger. "Would you like to hear my story?" Derek nodded. Sarah began. "I was born on Tavatha," she said. "It was a beautiful world, full of blue forests and fire hills. My people lived in peace. I was the youngest of 5 sisters." She paused, remembering. "I married young. My husband's name was Solon. He was a guard, strong, kind. His voice used to make the walls tremble," she said, smiling slightly. "What happened?" Derek asked gently. "The war came," she said, voice trembling. "Humans didn't start, and neither did we. But when big powers fight, small planets burn, ours burned." Derek stayed quiet. "Solon was taken to fight. He never returned. Our city was destroyed. The rich left first, the strong next, the weak, like me. We hid." She continued, slower now. "I ran with my children. From ship to ship, from planet to planet, I begged, I worked. I slept in tunnels, trash piles, cargo bays. No one cared. We were just numbers." Derek swallowed hard. "And now?" "We ended up here," she said. "I tried to get work, but no one hires a widow with children and no ID papers. They just laugh or shut the door." She looked away. "My children were starving. I was ready to give up. That night in the alley, I told myself, we sleep once more. If we don't wake up, it's okay." Derek's heart sank. "And then," she said quietly, "a man gave us a blanket." The room fell silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the heater. Derek finally spoke. "Your name, it means something, doesn't it?" Sarah nodded. "In my language, Sarah means light in the dark. My mother said it was a lucky name." Derek smiled gently. She was right. They both looked at the children. Rhea had rolled over and now had a tiny foot sticking out of the blanket. Derek walked over and tucked it back in. Sarah watched him, eyes soft. "I want to work," she said suddenly. "I'm not asking to live here for free. I can clean, cook, help you fix things. I just want my children to live." Derek looked at her. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "But if it makes you feel better, I could use help with scrap sorting." Her face lit up with hope. "I'm not a rescuer," Derek added. "I don't know how to raise kids. I don't even know how to cook properly. I will teach you," she said with a grin. They both laughed quietly. That evening, Sarah helped clean the hut. Derek brought back a few food packs from work. They shared them carefully. Rhea and Cal giggled when they tasted something sweet for the first time in weeks. And for the first time in years, Sarah sat beside someone at dinner, not hiding, not fearing, just existing. Later that night, after the children had fallen, asleep, Derek stood outside watching the stars. Sarah joined him. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "I know. You could have walked away forever." "I could have," Derek agreed. "But then I wouldn't have known your name or seen your kids smile." She looked up at the stars. "Maybe the universe still has a plan for us." Derek nodded. Maybe that plan started with a single blanket. That night, the cold came harder. The wind howled like a beast outside Derek's tiny hut. The heater stuttered. Sparks danced and died as it struggled to keep the small room warm. Inside, the blanket, the same one Derek had bought with his last coin, was wrapped tightly around Rhea and Cal. The children were fast asleep, cheeks finally full of color. Sarah sat close to them, keeping watch. She hadn't slept yet. Something about the wind, the deep, low cry in it, reminded her of war, of fire, of ships burning in the sky. She closed her eyes. A memory hit her, sharp and painful. A ruined hallway, her husband Solon screaming her name, a collapsing ceiling, his hand slipping from hers. She opened her eyes again. The pain never left. Derek was sitting near the heater, wrapped in a second blanket. He was tired. The day's work had been long, his back sore, but something felt off. He looked over at Sarah. She was trembling, not just from the cold, but from something else. He stood slowly, walked over and crouched beside her. "Are you okay?" She shook her head, eyes wet but not crying. "No," she whispered. "I'm not." Derek sat beside her, unsure of what to say. "I thought I was strong," she said. "But tonight, I feel like I'm shattering." Her voice cracked. "I've carried them across 5 worlds," she said. "I've begged, I've bled. I've sold everything I had except my body. And now I sit here, in a stranger's hut with nothing left but 2 children and 1 old blanket." Her hands were shaking. "I'm tired, Derek. I'm tired of being strong." Derek listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. She looked down at her hands. "Do you know what it feels like to beg your child to stop crying because it'll attract guards who hate your kind?" Derek's jaw clenched. "No, but I believe you." Sarah covered her mouth, trying to hold the sobs back. He reached out slowly and placed a hand over hers. She froze. No one had touched her gently in years. "I'm not here to fix everything," Derek said. "But tonight, you're not alone." She turned her head toward him. The heater sparked again. The light flickered, and for a moment she saw not a man, but a safe place. And that's when she broke. The sob came out loud, uncontrolled. She dropped her face into her hands and cried, truly cried, not quiet tears, but deep aching sobs from the bottom of her soul. Years of fear, years of silence, years of pain that had never been let out. It spilled out now, into the air between them. Derek said nothing. He simply stayed beside her. No judgment, no fear, just presence. She leaned into him. At first, just her shoulder touched his. Then her head rested on his chest. And still, he didn't move away. He let her cry. He let her feel. Because sometimes that's all a broken soul needs. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Finally, her tears stopped. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Derek shook his head. "Don't be. I didn't mean to fall apart." "Everyone has the right to fall apart sometimes," he said softly. "Even the strongest." She pulled back slightly, just enough to see his face. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being kind, without asking anything in return." Derek looked at her carefully. "The world has taken too much from you already. I'm not here to take anything." For the first time, Sarah smiled. A real, tired, beautiful smile. Then she asked, "Do you mind if I stay close tonight?" Derek looked at the heater, then at the freezing night outside. The blanket's big enough for 2. They sat side by side near the heater, sharing the old blanket. Neither spoke much. Rhea and Kyle slept peacefully nearby, and as the wind screamed outside, the silence inside the hut was full of warmth, not from fire, but from trust. That night, Sarah didn't feel like a widow. She didn't feel like a refugee. She didn't feel like a burden. She felt human, because one man had listened. One man had stayed. The snow had stopped, but the whispers had begun. It started with a few sideways glances in the scrapyard. Then came the murmurs behind backs, and finally, the full stares. People had noticed. A human man was sharing his home with a refugee alien widow, not just feeding her, not just sheltering her, living with her. Derek didn't care much for what others thought. He never had. He woke early, worked double shifts, ate little, saved up scrap food for Sarah and the kids. Some days they worked beside him. Sarah helped sort metal and clean tools while Rhea and Carl played in the corner. He was used to being alone, but now when he came home, the lights were on, the air was warmer, and someone was waiting. Sarah was trying. She cooked with scraps, cleaned the hut until it didn't look like a junk pile anymore. The kids laughed more now. They weren't afraid to speak or sing or draw patterns in the dust. Rhea had once drawn a picture of Derek and called him Papa. He hadn't known what to say, but the town had plenty to say. Is he with her? She's just using him. Alien. Women will do anything to stay legal. I bet she's not even a real widow. She's sleeping in his bed, isn't she? The cruel voices echoed in quiet corners. At first, Sarah heard nothing. Derek tried to shield her from it. But hate has a way of finding its target. One day at the market, Sarah stood quietly in line to get old flour rations. Cal clung to her dress. Rhea held her hand. Her translator ring blinked weakly. Behind her, two alien women whispered loudly on purpose. That's the human's pet, right? I heard she lives in his lap. Poor man. He doesn't know what she really is. Sarah said nothing. She just took her ration bag and walked away. But her face had lost its light when she returned home. That night, Derek noticed her silence. You okay? He asked as she stirred a pot of soup. She hesitated, then said, Do they talk about me? Derek paused, then nodded. Yes. She didn't look surprised. Do you believe them? She asked. No. Why not? He looked her in the eyes. Because I know you, and they don't. The next day, things got worse. While Derek was at work, someone threw a rock at his hut. It smashed a water tin. Rhea cried. Sarah held both children in silence until he returned. He was furious. Who did this? She stopped him. Don't. They want us to fight back. They want to prove I'm dangerous. His fists clenched, but he sat beside her instead. That night, she didn't sleep on the floor like before. She laid beside him. Nothing happened. No words were exchanged, just trust and shared warmth under that same blanket. The town kept talking, but something else started happening too. People saw the human and the alien woman working side by side. They saw the children smiling. They saw Sarah clean the old scrapyard with pride. They saw Derek laugh just a little, for the first time in years, and one by one the stares began to soften. Then came the real test. One afternoon, a trader in the town square started shouting at Derek over a mispriced part. He called Sarah names, called her filth, called her his blue toy. A crowd gathered. Derek tried to walk away, but then Sarah stepped forward. Calm, tall, steady. She stood in front of Derek and faced the trader. Her voice was firm, even without the translator. Gave us food. He gave us shelter. He gave us back our dignity. The translator blinked and echoed her words. He is more than a man. He is the reason my children live. The square went silent. No one expected her to speak. No one expected her to protect him. Later, that evening, Derek looked at her. Why did you do that? Sarah smiled. Because you are not just protecting us. I'm protecting you too. He stared at her for a long time. Then slowly he said, We're not just surviving anymore. Are we? She shook her head. No, we're becoming something else. He nodded. A family. Rain hit the rooftop hard that morning. Inside the small hut, Sarah boiled water while Rhea tried to braid her younger brother's hair. Carl giggled, wiggling away. Derek tightened the belt on his worn jacket and looked over at the small family. In his home, no, his family. He didn't say it out loud, not yet. But it was the truth. Derek was late to work that day. The scrapyard foreman, a thick-scaled alien named Grush, didn't like that. You're not paid to play house with refugees, Grush growled. We're here to work, not to rescue pretty pets. Derek clenched his jaw. He'd had enough. She's not a pet. She's better than half of you. Grush shoved him. Hard. Derek stumbled but didn't fight back. He needed the job too much. Next time, Grush hissed, I'll toss her back into the gutter where she belongs. Derek said nothing. He walked away, but someone had seen everything. That evening, Sarah was waiting with warm food and a hopeful smile, but the bruise on Derek's arm said something else. What happened? She asked softly. Just work, Derek said, sitting down with a sigh. She reached out and touched his arm gently. Don't lie to me. He met her eyes, tired. It doesn't matter, but it did matter, to her. She stood up. The next morning, Derek walked to work alone. He was surprised to find a crowd gathered outside the scrapyard gates. Sarah was there. She wore her cleanest dress. Her back was straight. Her children stood beside her, holding a small hand-painted sign that read, We are not less. The crowd murmured. Grush pushed through. What is this? Sarah stepped forward, calm. I want to speak. Grush laughed. No one wants to hear your voice, alien. But she already had people's attention. She activated the translator ring and spoke loud and clear. You all know Derek. He works harder than any other man here. He shows up early. He leaves late. And when others spit at us, he offers food. She turned toward the people watching. He gave his last coin to save my children from freezing. He let us live under his roof. And now you punish him for showing compassion? The crowd was silent. She continued, voice rising with every word. If kindness is weakness, then may the stars strike me down. Because I will never forget the man who treated me like a person. Then softer. And if any of you still have honor, you won't either. Grush scoffed. You think this changes anything? Someone behind him spoke. She's right. Another voice. Derek fixed my heater last week. Didn't even charge me. A third. His kids call him Papa. Let them be. Grush turned, but the crowd had already started to turn on him. Derek stepped forward slowly. You didn't have to do that, he said to Sarah. I wanted to, she replied. You gave me a voice. Today I used it. He looked at her, really looked. And in that moment something changed. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about standing together. That night they sat close inside the hut. The rain had stopped. The air was still. Rhea leaned against Derek's arm. Kal played with small wires like toys. Sarah stirred the pot gently. Why did you really step forward? Derek asked. Sarah smiled softly. Because for the first time in a long time, someone stood up for me. Then she added, and I couldn't let the man who saved my life feel alone. He didn't reply. He just reached for her hand under the table, and for the first time she didn't flinch. She held it. Tight. Outside, people were still talking, still watching, still judging. But inside the small hut, two broken souls had found strength in each other. And the woman who had once whispered for help in the shadows now stood in the light. For him. The snow had started falling again. Not hard like before, just soft flakes dancing through the wind. It covered the metal roofs, like a quiet blanket. Inside Derek's small hut something had changed, not the walls. Not the old heater still buzzing in the corner, but the feeling. It didn't feel like a shelter anymore. It felt like home. Rhea and Kal were chasing each other around a stack of empty ration boxes, their laughter echoing through the room. Sarah was kneeling by the fire pit, carefully pouring hot broth into small clay bowls she had shaped herself. Derek stood in the doorway, watching the snow. He wasn't thinking about machines or credits or the gossip outside. He was thinking about how warm it felt in his chest. He turned, Sarah met his eyes, and smiled. That night, the children fell asleep quickly. Bellies full, faces relaxed, Sarah covered them with the same old blanket, the one that started it all. Then she sat beside Derek near the heater. They didn't speak for a while. Finally, she asked, Do you ever miss Earth? He thought for a moment. Sometimes, but there's nothing left for me there. She nodded. I feel the same about Tavatha. Derek looked down at his hands. Strange, huh? We lost our homes and somehow ended up making one together. Sarah's eyes softened. Maybe two broken worlds can build one whole life. She stood up quietly and reached into a small cloth bag. She pulled out something wrapped in soft cloth. Derek watched as she opened it carefully. Inside was a necklace, simple, made of worn beads and a metal token. This belonged to Solon, she said. My husband. She paused, fingers running over the token. He will always be in my heart, but I no longer cry when I speak his name. Derek remained silent, sensing something sacred in the moment. Sarah looked up. That's because someone else gave me a reason to keep living. She took a deep breath and stepped closer. I don't have much to offer. No land, no dowry, no papers, but she held out the necklace. My people believe when you give someone your mate's token, it means you're ready to love again. Derek looked stunned. I've watched you become father to my children, she said, protector of my soul, and friend to my heart. She placed the necklace in his hand. If you'll have me, not just in your home but in your life, I'm yours. For a long moment he said nothing. Then Derek did something Sarah had never seen. He cried. Just 2 tears. One for the man he used to be, lonely, tired, lost, and one for the man he was becoming. With her he looked up, smiled softly and whispered, You already are. Later that night, under the blanket they now both shared, Derek held her close, not as a rescuer, not as a stranger, but as a man who had finally found peace. The next morning, when Cal woke up, he found his mother curled into Derek's side, sleeping. Peacefully, he ran to his sister. Rhea, Mama's not cold anymore. Rhea grinned. Told you, Papa makes the best fire. Derek opened one eye and laughed. Sarah laughed too, soft and real. And for the first time in many years, she didn't feel like a widow. She felt like a wife. Outside, snow kept falling. But inside that hut, inside that home, warmth lived. In every breath, every smile, every hand held under the table. They didn't have much, but they had each other. And sometimes, love is the only heat that truly saves.